How do they go there? What is this? 1, 2, 3. Apophyseal portal system. Very few of you answered, but I'll just take it as is. Okay? Repeated that so much. Okay. And that will promote, those G and RH will promote, some of them, by the way, will inhibit, but eventually, the solution, the outcome will be, at the right time, at the right place, they will promote synthesis and secretion of two pituitary hormones. One is called LH for luteinizing hormone, and the other one is called FSH for follicle stimulating hormone. And they will be secreted, and will go everywhere, as we learned. But in the testis, we're going to have the cells with the right relevant receptors for them. Luteinizing hormones, do we have a follicle in the sperm? We don't have any follicles. So what do you call it? Follicle stimulating hormone. Because we have them in the female. And basically these are the same. They were first discovered in the females, but it's one of those similarities. FSH and LH do not exactly the same outcomes, but they are both the same hormones that promote maturation of the sperm as maturation of the oocyte. So we're going to talk about LH and FSH. A lot of things going on here. So before we go and talk, all the arrows and everything, let's make sure we got it. So here is the hypothalamus secreting G and RH. These are not the testes. I know it looks like them. This is the testis right here. So these are testicles. This is the anterior pituitary gland. And it secretes LH and FSH as a result of the G and RH. There are two target cells that we're going to talk about. First of all, let's talk about LH and its target cells right here. These are the Leydig. We also call them interstitial cells because they're interstitial fluid. And they, as a result of LH stimulation, they're going to make the main androgen, testosterone. Testosterone is a derivative of what? What is it made from? Let's see if you remember some rules of the endocrine system. Cholesterol. Thank you. What is testosterone? What's the chemical nature of testosterone? It's a steroid. Okay? Steroids in the interstitial fluid, going in, finding the right cells, that's a problem, right? Because they don't like water. So we're going to have a protein that helps them navigate, get into the seminiferous tubules and bind to the target cell, the Sertoli cells. And that one is made by the Sertoli cells. And it's called, I'll just call it accessory proteins, okay? It's called ADP, but never mind. Just think about it as an accessory protein. Helps bringing the testosterone, stabilize it, and bring it to the right place. The Sertoli cells will also make a hormone called inhibin. And the inhibin, as you can imagine, it inhibits. So testosterone is going to go to the cells here. It's a major androgen, not the only one. And it's going to stimulate, for example, spermatogenesis and other things that we're going to talk about shortly. It also goes somewhere else. Where else it's affecting something? Look at the diagram. Again, I want to go back to make sure we've got a concept here. What's the concept that I'm trying to address? Can I count to 3 and you'll do me a favor just because before Thanksgiving and I'll be really happy? Yeah, look at it. I'm looking for a concept. 2 words, that's the hint. 1, 2, 3. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. Okay, negative feedback. So they go not just to promote the positive outcome, they're also going to go back, inhibin from the Sertoli cells, testosterone from the Leydig cells. They're going to go back and say, if we have enough concentration, they're going to say stop. We have enough of that. We don't need too much testosterone. That can be problematic. Look at that and ask me if there are any questions. Yes, yes. Exactly. The Sertoli cells make that protein, accessory protein, that helps testosterone get inside the seminiferous tubules and be there in health and start to stimulate the spermatogonia. They're happening at the same time. FSH and LH will happen at the same time. Yes?
If someone would have Sertoli cells, it would impact their infertility and it looks like a lot of other things because it helps with the production of.
Yeah, do we need Sertoli cells? We definitely do. First of all, remember, they're also responsible for nursing those cells. developing sperm and preventing self-attack by our immune system. But yeah, we need that protein.
Do you have to be alive?
To be honest, I don't know if mutations, for example, Miranda was asking about mutations earlier on. If we have mutations in the gene encoding this specific protein, but we still have the Sertoli cells, whether it's complete infertility, or maybe we'll just have, maybe testosterone will be able to make it, I actually don't know. But it's definitely going to have an effect. Yes?
Can you be alive without Sertoli cells?
Oh, you'll be alive without Sertoli cells. You can be alive if you're a male without a testis, right? In many cases, because of cancer or something you remove. It's not essential for the individual. It's essential for the species, evolutionary-wise. Anything else? Anything about, yes, yeah.
You said too much testosterone would be problematic.
Too much testosterone will definitely be problematic. Testosterone is going to, an androgen is going to have multiple effects, right? People sometimes who want to build muscle will go and inject testosterone because it's an anabolic hormone. And it has, like, you remember when we talk about the endocrine system, there's no hormone that actually acts just on one target cell in one biological process. It always acts on too much and it always causes an imbalance. So yeah, you can have too much testosterone. Let's see what testosterone does, okay? First off, I want to mention something that is hidden there, but we did not discuss it because I don't want to focus on that. We talked all the time about, okay, we have a testis, we have the spermatozoa, we have all those ducts, and now we have testosterone. But something needed to develop these, right? To say in the early embryo, let's make those different ducts, right? Let's make testis. Testosterone actually has a role back there in the embryonic stages. We did not talk about it at all. It stimulates formation and development, but then it goes down and then it stays in birth until puberty. Okay, you're not responsible for that, what happens in the embryo. But I do want to mention that it's important for the growth of the system. When we talk about females and males, we'll talk about similarities next time, but what's the default? What's the natural system if you don't deal with anything? Anyone knows? You've learned it maybe in another class?
Yeah.
It's the female. So the female reproductive system is the default. When you are XY on the Y chromosome, what you have are the genes that will determine, okay, now we need to make some changes. We will stop developing the female reproductive system. We are shifting to the male reproductive system, and now we're making testosterone. Okay? But we are focusing only on puberty and after puberty. So let's see what testosterone is doing. First and foremost, of course, it tells the spermatogonia, guys, it's time. Let's go, not just for mitosis, let's go for meiosis, let's make sperm. We are ready. We are mature in this sense. 13 years old, back then, nature-wise, that was fine. Okay? It's responsible for two groups of effects or outcomes: the primary sexual characteristics and the secondary sexual characteristics. So the primary is the ability to produce sperm cells and the enlargement and differentiation of the male genitalia, of everything. This is what happens to kids at that age. But it's not just that, right? You guys went to middle school. You know what happens to males back there, right? And there's a lot of other things, right? We see more hair growth, right? And many other things. So let's see, male secondary sexual characteristics. Structural and behavioral changes. For example, hair distribution, right? Remember those days? Males, when we were looking for that very first one in the armpit, let alone the mustache. Man, you feel like you're a grown-up, right? Something on your legs, that's great. After that, you're trying to remove all of this, but back then, when you're 13, that's a big thing, right? Growth, again, of muscles, body mass as a whole. We talked about growth in length back in the days. We talked about the role of testosterone working with growth hormone on the plate. Reduced tension of the vocal folds, right? What are the vocal folds? We didn't talk about them in this course. What are responsible? Sun, right? This is where all the 12, 13-year-old boys start to talk like that, right? Because they're trying to find, like, they are the alpha males, right? And that, you all remember that poem in the start, right? This is the time when they're changing their tension, but they're not yet solid in a way, right? They have a lot of thickness on them. That's exactly the case. Increased metabolism. We're growing, basically. That's the idea. You're becoming that alpha male. Why do we need all this? And why do we need all of this stuff? Why is testosterone responsible for this? Anyone has any idea? Again, I'm trying to go back to the essential idea, to the core idea that we're discussing, that we mentioned in the beginning. As an individual, you don't need to have sex. You don't need to have a reproductive organ. So why do we have sex? Why do we need a reproductive organ? Martin? That you are a male, and your maleness, and here I'm the best male. Exactly. Evolution is the one driving everything here. It's the idea that if I want to take care of this species, not the individual, we want a reproductive system, right? We want a semen, we want a sexual intercourse. So basically you get all the behavioral aspects of that, saying, hey, I am the best male, I'm the stronger, look at my muscles. I will give you the best progeny, the best embryo, the best kid, the strongest, the fittest, not necessarily the strongest, right? So all of the characteristics of testosterone are basically being shown here to show you, the female, I'm a male, I cannot show you how good my sperm are, but I'm going to show you my testosterone, right? And if my testosterone is so great that I have hair here, who cares, right? It does care because it tells me that I have sperm that are just waiting for the next step. Does it make sense? That's the idea. And it also affects our sexual behavior. Why? Because we want to want it. We want it to be a good, pleasant experience, so we can drive this, so we will have that next generation. So testosterone is also responsible for the male sexual behavior. Okay? Which organ in the male, and please do not be too politically correct, okay, and sensitive, which organ in the male is responsible for the male sexual behavior? You can use your hands just to show on yourself, males or not males. I don't care right now, just to show if you are a male, where is that organ found? Come on, let me see everyone. Many of you got it right? It's right here. It's not down there. Down there is a tool, right? The sexual behavior, everything is in the brain, and where specifically in the brain? The hypothalamus. We talked about the thirst drive, we talked about the hunger drive, satiety, and this is the sex drive. It's all in the hypothalamus. It's actually not testosterone, it's going to be derivatives of testosterone, but the same idea, androgens. And in order for the sexual behavior for the sexual intercourse to take place, we need to have two different processes in the male. One is called erection, and the other one ejaculation. As much as I'm very much not politically correct, and I'm sometimes inappropriate, and crossing boundaries, I want to hold my job, so I'm not going to show you pictures of erections and ejections and ejaculations, right? I just thought about something that will show this, so I just call it, if you are the weatherman guy, don't stand in the wrong position. That poor guy, for a few years now, is standing, all my students doing it. Okay. Erection and ejaculation. Who is responsible? Think about the logic. Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Sympathetic. What did we talk about, the sympathetic and parasympathetic? They typically what? Antagonize each other, right? This is so important. Evolutionary-wise, this is one of the very few cases when they work together. They do not antagonize. It's both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic is responsible for the physical erection, the ability to undergo an intercourse. We need that. But without ejaculation, without releasing the sperm with the semen, it will not work, so this is the sympathetic division. So let's talk just a little bit about erection and the parasympathetic. Any questions so far? I did not stop questions for testosterone, so anything that is not clear? Okay, so parasympathetic. Now, if you ask someone who doesn't know anything or heard, not just in biology, or didn't hear anything about it, the first thing you'll think about are muscles, right? And we're going to stimulate contraction of muscles, and we have an erection, which is exactly not the way it works, which is interesting. And you'll think about sympathetic, right? Like you all said, it makes sense. It actually is going to be by dilution and by expansion of water. So what's the idea here? Or blood and water. So this is you don't remember the corpora cavernosa, just the name for the erectile. This is the erectile body, and we're talking about two of these erectile bodies, and in a section, cross section, this is what we'll see. So don't focus on the bottom one. We're talking about the two top ones, the corpora cavernosa. You don't need to remember the name. Okay. What we see here is in the middle we have an arteriole. It's a cross section, so it comes with the blood. And around it, all the area is kind of like a spongy tissue filled with these small cavities. I don't know if you can see it clearly. These are gray ones that can be filled with blood or not filled with blood. And that's kind of like the resting state. When the parasympathetic is starting to signal, okay, after our brain starts to say, oh, we want to go for a sexual intercourse, so we need an erection so we'll be able to undergo the sexual intercourse. What you're going to see, what does the parasympathetic do typically? Dilation or constriction? Dilation. You're going to see dilation of the arteriole. Now if you look at the same one, the same area, look here. We're going to have a larger arteriole, so coming with more blood to the system, and the blood is going to be released to those cavities, so all the spongy bone is basically, it's like a sponge absorbed with water and extends. As a whole, when you look at the entire penis, what happens is basically it changes its angle, it's erected. What is outside? What are the blue things here? These are the veins, the venules and the veins. They typically take the blood and the circulation, right? But here what we'll have when the spongy erectile tissue is expanding, it's going to press the veins and the venules, right? It's venules actually at this point. The venules to the wall. And as a result, the venules are blocked. So you pushed more blood into the system, you prevented blood from coming in, and now the system is just engaged with, filled with blood. And that's erection failure. Any other question? The vessels, I don't remember the actual fact, but it makes sense that they will be highly fenestrated, yes. I don't remember if they are or not. Okay? Anyone heard about medication that developed 10 years ago now, I think, that is really helping with people who have, males who have a problem with erection? Viagra, right? That's the name of the Viagra. I actually don't remember the name of the actual pharmaceutical medication. The idea is Viagra is extending, I guess, the time of this because it prevents, typically you have a process and then that process stops at some point because of different secondary messengers. The Viagra is inhibiting those secondary messengers that will stop the dilation. Therefore, you have a longer dilation. That's the idea. Yes? They're not competing, they're complementing. Exactly, so they're distinct. So parasympathetic is responsible for erection, and now comes the sympathetic, and the sympathetic is going to be responsible for ejaculation, and not just ejaculation. Again, what did we say about the behavior, about our thinking? Evolution-wise, do we want to have the sex? We want to, right? We want the sex, because if I don't want, I'll just stay in my room, right? I mean, you can stay in your room and still ejaculate, but that's a different story. It's not about the reproductive system, right? But I'm not going to try to get into any sexual intercourse. I won't have the next generation. So that's exactly what the sympathetic division is doing. So the sympathetic division is going to cause, A, the reproductive ducts and all the accessory organs to contract and empty the contents. That's together making what? I said that already? The semen, with all the nutrients, with all the developing factors, with the fructose and so on. Okay? We have a bladder sphincter muscle that is going to constrict. Why is that? Because we have the urinary bladder, right? And we talked about things that are not advantageous. That's one of the great examples, right? In males, a good example of something that is not the best time, definitely, right? Is that you are excreting your urine from the same ducts and from the same place that you're going to do it with, but with sperm and semen. You don't want that to mix. That's A, it's disgusting, but B, right, it's not good. So what's the idea? The idea is at least we're going to block urination by blocking the urethra. Okay, so you have a sphincter that is going to contract. Rhythmic contraction of the penis muscle leading to propulsion of the semen, everything that helps not just releasing the sperm, but releasing the semen, but also releasing everything from the ducts. Where is the sperm waiting until the sympathetic division starts to signal? At the end of the epididymis, right? So now it's time to start contracting the smooth muscles of the vas efferens and going all the way up. And eventually, this is what we call the orgasm. Orgasm is a physiological word. It's a physiological term, right? It's the idea of increased heartbeat and high blood pressure and pleasure sensation. So we will want to have that sex. That's the idea. Any questions about the male reproductive system? Okay. I'm going to shift to the female reproductive system. Now, I'm not going to go too much into it, just because you haven't done your readings and so far. We're just going to introduce it a bit. And we're going to start working with something we'll complete after Thanksgiving. You have a lot of things to think about during Thanksgiving. Please make sure that physiology is not one of them. You just enjoy Thanksgiving. Okay. So, this is another birds and bees. This is how it would look like if it was really birds and bees. So don't believe stories they tell you. Okay. Now, when we talk about the female reproductive system, now that we are experts in the male reproductive system, instead of thinking about everything from scratch, let's just compare and contrast, right? So the three first functions are basically the same. The female reproductive system is responsible for producing the gametes, in this case oocytes versus spermatocytes. It's going to make the female sex hormones. There are multiple of these, but if you think about it, just like we thought about testosterone, what are the two main ones that we can think about when we think about females? Estrogen and progesterone. And they have their derivatives, not the only one, but we're going to talk about them. Oops. We talked about the male reproductive system being responsible, right, for propagating, propelling the sperm from the testis all the way to the outside and hopefully into the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system is going to help the sperm cells, but only the best sperm cells, to make it up for fertilization, towards the fertilization area. The final is very different. And that's nurturing the developing embryo. So what is that? What is that fourth thing? How is that different from the sperm? Based on what we know, and I think you know that, even if we did not read yet about the female reproductive system. What is different between an oocyte and a sperm? Genetic-wise, chromosome numbers, gene numbers, we're the same? We're the same. So what else do we have? We have different proteins. We have a huge cytoplasm. It's a huge cell, really huge, right? It has a lot of cytoplasm, but it's not just cytoplasm. These are proteins and different RNAs. Those who learn genetics, for example, microRNAs, regulatory proteins, so on, maternal RNAs that come from the mother, because we are mammals, and we need to take care of these. It's not just, of course, for mammals, but we're talking about mammals. We need to take care of that young embryo until we reach the pregnancy time when the placenta will take place of everything in nurture. So we're going to have size and a lot of components. And we need to adjust anatomically to that part, and we'll see how we do that. Okay, so just a gross anatomy of everything. Ovaries are the counterpart of the testes. They are the male female reproductive organ. They're found in both sides. Everything is symmetrical. Okay, and you have accessory ducts that include we start from here. So I have here, yes, we can go from the top. So we have the ovaries. Ampulla is we have the fallopian tubes, and then ampulla is just an expansion of the fallopian tubes. This is where typically, not always, but typically where fertilization will take place. Okay? So the oocyte, once it's ready, is going to help me with a verb here. Leave the ovary towards the ampulla. What are you familiar with? Any verb, it's going to do what from the ovary? To not to be expelled, we have a word for that. To ovulate, that's the ovulation. It's going to leave the ovary, reach the ampulla here in this region, and hopefully there will be a sperm waiting for it, and then fertilization will take place. We have a fallopian tube, and then Again, if we're talking about later development, the fertilized embryo will move along the fallopian tube, reach the uterus and the uterine wall, and eventually through the clitoris and going to the vagina, uterus. I'm already mentioning the endometrium because that's the layer facing the lumen, and that's the layer where the embryo will need to undergo implantation. It's going to be very critical, and we'll talk about it next week. And then we have the cervix and the vagina. If you think about it, the way the sperm makes is exactly the way the embryo makes, but backwards, right? Sperm goes from vagina, cervix, through the uterus lumen, going to fallopian tube, waiting for the ovary, for the oocyte, and after ovulation, if fertilization took place, going back out. Any questions about, I know you'll need to read it about first, but just in general. Okay, the last thing I wanted to do, I want to take 2 or 3 minutes, okay? And something that, again, we did not read about yet, but based on what you know, let's compare and contrast spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Think together as groups about, how is that different? Oogenesis, the formation of the oocytes. Spermatogenesis, we know, formation of the sperm. What is similar between them, but how are they different? Okay, in the processes. Think about maybe the timing, think about how long, think about anything. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for that. Let's see what you think. How are they similar? Formation of sperm, formation of oocyte or eggs. How are they similar? What do we have similar in this process? Anyone wants to suggest? Nicole. Both reach haploidy, right? So we have a process called meiosis, a unique process that only spermatocytes or spermatogonia, primary spermatocytes undergo. The same thing goes for primary oocytes, right? They are the only cells that undergo meiosis. Exactly the case. What about the end product of meiosis? Anyone knows this? How many spermatids do I get from one primary spermatocyte?
4.
4. How many oocytes or eggs mature am I going to get from division 1? Andrews, how many? Nobody. I'm seeing you. They don't see you. So just say that. 1. How come? What's the idea here? We're starting with potentially we could have had 4, right? But we're ending actually with 1. What's the why 1? We are reducing our potential fitness, potential chance for fertilization. Miranda, why do we have 1?
Is it because there's like all that cytoplasm and they all concentrated in the
Wonderful. It's again function follows form. In this case, it's actually function follows function or following the goal. Remember the objective, the goal, we want to nurture the developing embryo, so we need a lot of cytoplasm. So instead of making 4 small oocytes, what we're going to do, we're going to actually not kill, we're going to just die. The 3 potential oocytes are going to become what we call polar bodies, and then the cytoplasm, the one that is surviving, that's a big one, basically. So we're not wasting energy and resources, we're just putting all the resources into one oocyte. How am I doing with timing? Okay, anything about the timing? Let's get some input. When, with males, when do we start with spermatogenesis? Puberty, right? We said bar mitzvah and so on, kind of, give or take. When do we start with oogenesis? Before they're even born, right? When do we complete that part? So almost before we are born, in the sense that when we are born, when the females are born, they are born with the set number of oocytes they will have. But unlike male, we're not done with the process. It's being frozen. It stops for some time until puberty and until we get into the cycling thing that we call the periods, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Okay? So we talk about this, and I think it's about time. Please note the 2 other bottom lines. We have student evaluations and Q52 PY survey. A wonderful time to complete your assignments. Okay? Have a